You've expressed an awful lot of disappointment in John Lynch. And the reason why the 49ers, might not have had the best year last year is because of a staggering amount of failed early round draft picks. Well, I was talking to Warren Sharp about that yesterday. And if you don't mind me, I'd like to play a little of this video for you here, Larry, and for the people watching. I asked Warren straight up. So let me just ask you, do you think John Lynch is a good general manager?
Look, it's very difficult to say that I think that he is. I think if Brock Purdy does not emerge, and I don't know anybody who could expect Mr. Irrelevant to emerge and become the starting franchise quarterback and get a contract like he just did. So a lot of that has to be luck. And if that doesn't happen, John Lynch might be out of a job.
I think everyone's gone. If Brock Purdy didn't happen, I don't know if anyone remains.
So for that simple fact alone, I cannot say that John Lynch is a good general manager. I do not think that he has done exceptionally well in the draft. The clear models do not agree that he's done well. So I think they are going to need a lot of these young players to step up. I think they're a very fragile team as well. They need their starting caliber guys, the guys that are getting paid the most money, that you guys have more of than most other teams because you're such a top heavy roster with some of these key players getting paid a lot of money. You need them to stay healthy. So you need health from the players that are being paid, and you need these young guys to step into prominent roles. You mentioned Robert Saleh. I just want to make sure that I reiterate that fact to your listeners. I think it's going to be a massive upgrade. I know some of your listeners probably don't love the personnel that you have, front to back on your starting 11 defensively, and it is probably the weak link on the roster. That being said, you finally are going to be coached by someone who not only had a ton of success, but I think still was doing a great job coaching his side of the ball in New York for the Jets.
So, Larry, I'm just going to cut it off right there because he gets into Saleh, and we get into the fact that the 49ers had such extreme second half struggles last year. But that's just part of an interview, and this is something that you and I have talked about an awful lot. Is John Lynch possibly the weakest link when it comes to, the roster construction and the reaches that he's made? And Warren even has the caveat saying, hey, man, if Nick Martin and Upton Stout turn into really good players, and if Mikael Williams is a total stud, then John Lynch is officially smarter than all of us and all the math models that say he reached too much for all these guys. And huzzah. That's why you got John Lynch as your GM. But if it doesn't work out, he's just saying that there is an overwhelming amount of evidence that John Lynch is so far off the projected who should be taken where map that maybe you have to stop trusting his instincts if this class doesn't start really working out. Is that fair? I think it is.
Okay. I mean, I think it's, first of all, it's never easy to grade things out. It's never black and white. It's always shades of gray. Right? It's never all one way or all another way. If it was, it would be real easy, and it's not real easy. It's very difficult. So on one hand, I think you got to give John Lynch an enormous amount of credit because he has given the 49ers a mature, likable, public face of the franchise.
Right. He's not Farhan. He's not a failure. You cannot go to Super Bowl.
He's not Trent Baalke.
Failure. No, exactly.
It's not Trent Baalke. He's not Jim Harbaugh. I mean, during the Harbaugh years, the Niners were successful, but they also had a really rough thing, is that nobody liked them. Nobody liked Cap. Nobody liked Harbs. Nobody liked Baalke. Nobody liked that team. They liked that team was good. Don't get me wrong. We all enjoyed how physical they were, but there wasn't like a likable face of the franchise. John Lynch, I think, has given the 49ers a lot of credibility league-wide. I think he has given them a lot of, the buck stops with him. He is the adult in the room. He is classy. He is smart. He's a great face of your franchise. He's given them tremendous credibility. So that's one area, right? Credibility-wise, the face of the franchise, that's one area. Done really well. Okay. Then there's the trade aspect. This guy traded like a second and a fifth for Trent Williams, who's the greatest offensive tackle of his era. This guy traded a first, a second, and a third for Christian McCaffrey and almost won the Super Bowl and added other guys like Charles Menahue and other trades on the way that did help the 49ers, get real close. And they have had 4 NFC Championship game appearances, and they've had 2 Super Bowl appearances. And if they had won either of those games, would we be talking about this differently? And I can't put that much into one game. Like, oh yeah, if you'd won the Super Bowl, now you're undeniable. But because you haven't won the Super Bowl, now you're crap and you suck.
Right. But look,
at the same time, I think you have to be fair about the failures. This is 9 drafts. 9. He's led 9 drafts. And their first round picks are Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, Mike McGlinchey, Nick Bosa, great one, Javon Kinlaw, Brandon Ayuk, Trey Lance, Ricky Pearsall, and Mikael Williams. It's not an awesome group of first round picks. So yeah, I would say on drafting, I think I got to give John Lynch a C. On trades, I think I got to give him an A-. And on face of the franchise, I got to give him an A. But to me, that doesn't, when you cook it all together, Damon, that doesn't end up with like an F. To me, that ends up with like a B-. So I that's what I'd give him. I'd give him like a B-. A for face of the franchise, A- for the trades. Kind of a, probably like a B-, C+, C for the drafts. I mean, he did find Kittle. He's drafted some great players, Warner, Kittle, you name it, Purdy in the 7th round, but
he's
too
had
many
more
misses.
late draft
Too many
success,
misses.
and he's had early draft success, especially when you factor in Brock Purdy. So
yes.
There are 2 things can be equally true. Once said Ralph Barbieri very correctly, and John does have a lot going for him, and some of the moves he has made have been outstanding. But the amount
and the success. I mean, Damon, are we in this world where is this Talladega Nights? Are you Ricky Bobby? It's like if you ain't winning, you're losing, and all that crap. I mean, bottom line is outside of the Chiefs, there isn't a team that's been more successful than the Niners. Here, I have the numbers in front of me. In fact, I'll just read you this little number. It's kind of pretty interesting, Damon. From 2019 through 2023. Okay, so that's, Lynch and Shanahan took over in 2017. So basically, and Saleh came in 2019.
But
so since Saleh,
you have 2 years of full flush that you might as well just get rid of.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So 2019 through 2023, the 49ers won 54 regular season games. Only the Packers won more games among NFC teams, and they went to 2 Super Bowls, losing to the Chiefs both times. The Niners from 2019 to 2023 also had 8 playoff wins over that span. That's second in the NFL, only behind the Chiefs. So, I don't think, I'm a draft guy. I believe in the draft. And I always want more. And I hold John and everybody who does drafting to really, really, really high standards. But I think if we're fair, and Damon, you and I have been doing this for a long time. And there's people that do this for 5 minutes and are not very fair with people. But if you do this for when I say this, I'm talking about teams and sports radio, now sports media. We're doing YouTube today. If you do this for as long as Damon and I have been doing this, you don't do this for that long if you're not credible. You don't do this for 30 freaking years and have great general managers, coaches, players, and everything. These people don't come on your show all the time. Damon wouldn't have gotten Warren Sharp if he didn't have credibility. I wouldn't have the people I've had on my show, from Baldy to Steve Young to others, without credibility. All right? So, and you don't get credibility by being cheap with people and not being fair. We are going to be fair to John Lynch. We are going to be fair to Kyle Shanahan. We are going to be fair to the players. Period. End of story. End of sentence. We are going to be fair. That's how you do this for decades. And in fairness, John Lynch has been well above the average NFL drafter. He's not been as good as Howie Roseman. He hasn't been as good as Eric DeCosta. He hasn't been as good as Les Snead. He's not the best GM going, but he's not the worst.
Right. He is right. He's not even close to being the worst, but he might be the weak link, and there might be more responsibility attached to roster construction being the reason why the 49ers haven't quite gotten it done. I mean, if we're going to throw away the first couple of drafts, we can't throw away the last three, right? Well, last three, you got Dominic Pooney, Renardo Green, Ricky Pearsall. You got one stud for sure. I like Renardo Green a lot. Ricky Pearsall, we'll all see. In 2023, Jair Brown, again, lost his starting job. Jake Moody, nobody likes him. Cameron Latu, not on the team. In 2022, it's Drake Jackson, Tyrion Davis-Price, and Danny Gray. All three guys are gone. So there have been a lot of missed picks that were in the time, you wanted to get excited about them. And look, this is what Warren Sharp wrote. After ranking 28th in draft value last year, the Niners did even worse this year, ranking 31st in draft value. The Niners had the sixth most draft capital and potentially wasted a lot of it. He says wide receiver Jordan Watkins out of Ole Miss was picked at 131, but wasn't even ranked in the top 300 by the consensus big boards. Nick Martin, who I know you're excited about, Larry. I'm excited about Nick Martin.
I like Watkins too.
Yeah, he was drafted at 75, but wasn't projected to go until around 200. Marquis Signal, Upton Stout also represent multiple round reaches. So John Lynch
but I don't know.
To show us he's the smart, he really was on it and he was right about these things. Or once again, he is making reaches that are not delivering. We will find out.
I don't subscribe to this theory. I really don't. It's the old saying, it's like if your premise is wrong, your conclusion by definition is wrong. So if you're, so if your premise was that the guy was a first round pick, doesn't mean that he was. That was just your evaluation. And a lot of times we go by just kind of like the mock drafts say, yeah, but who's doing the mock drafts? A lot of times it's media people, and a lot of times it's people that are doing these mock drafts haven't even seen even half of the prospects. So it's like I don't put tons of credence in that. And let me just say this too. Let me just say this. As great as, Bill Walsh is probably the most credible. He might be one of the most credible voices in the history of pro football.
Absolutely.
Right? This is who Bill Walsh invested in first picks in his drafts. 1979. Yeah, he took Joe Montana, but he also took some guy named James Owens in the second round. Okay. 1980, he had 2 first-round picks, and he took Keena Turner in the second round. But in the first round, he took Earl Cooper and Jim Stuckey. Okay, they were on the team. They won the Super Bowl in '81, but those are first round picks. Right. Then he took Ronnie Lott in '81, great pick, and Eric Wright in '81 in the second round. But also he took some guy named John Hardy out of Iowa, nose tackle in the second round. He didn't do anything. In '82, Walsh's first pick in the second round was Bubba Paris. In '83, his first pick in the second round was Roger Craig. Great pick. But he also took Blanchard Montgomery in the third round. Okay. The next year, '84, his first round pick was Todd Shell. Now he took Michael Carter, Jeff Fuller, later in the draft, Guy McIntyre, John Frank. But his first round pick in '84 was Todd Shell. Okay. He played 38 NFL games. Rice in '85. Traded up for Rice, but every other pick in that draft was a bust. 86 was his bonanza draft, but his first draft choice that year was Larry Roberts. Harris Barton was his first round pick in '87, but he had 2 number ones. His second number one was Terrence Flagler, bust. His second round pick was Jeff Briegel out of USC, steroid monster, bust. His first pick in '88 was Danny Stubbs
Yeah, well, look, we can do this with everybody. We could do this.
He's bad. Keith DeLong was his first round pick in '89. Dexter Carter in '90. My point is just that, you know what, Bill Walsh is considered like the greatest, and yet if you go back, there's all kinds of mistakes at the top of the draft. The bottom line is, it's really, really hard to draft. And instead of saying John Lynch sucks, I prefer to sit here and go, you know what? John Lynch doesn't suck. Howie Roseman is awesome. How about, why don't we start there? Eric DeCosta is awesome. Brett Veach is awesome. Les Snead is awesome. These guys are really, really good at this.
Well,
I wouldn't necessarily say that John Lynch is terrible. I'm just saying that he's maybe not quite in that category. And since he was a Hall of Fame safety, it probably would be asking a lot for him to be a Hall of Fame executive. There's only one Ozzie Newsome, right?
I look, you make a ton of good points. No one is here bagging on John Lynch, but the team is in a situation right now where, they are. And another thing that John Lynch has been really good at is retaining the players that he wants to stay. He really does. Outside of Dre Greenlaw, who feels like might have got away, but then got hurt again. So it doesn't feel nearly as much like that. Right now, the 49ers are the only team with 3 players making $30 million or more on average in the NFL. Brock Purdy, Nick Bosa, and Brandon Ayuk. They're also tied with the Eagles as the only 2 teams with 7 players making at least $19 million per year. That's Purdy, Bosa, Ayuk, Williams, Warner, Kittle, and McCaffrey. When you have that much money invested in your top shelf liquor, you start losing those liquor bottles. You get into trouble quickly because you're working in an underpaid, less experienced depth chart. The underpaid, less experienced depth chart for the 49ers could not carry the freight of last year's injuries. They really couldn't. Now, maybe they might have been able to if the rest disadvantage had not been so extreme and they had a little bit more time to coach some of their back of the roster players up to front of the roster production. Nick Sorensen, again, being replaced by Robert Saleh, massive upgrade. New special teams, massive upgrade. But if the Niners have their highest paid players injured, like a line of dominoes falls down again, they're going to be belly up once again. They have an awful lot of money invested in the top third of their roster. And once that gets hurt, you're in a lot of trouble. That's the Niners, I think, exist. All teams exist in that universe. The Niners doubly so. And is that is that Parag? Now we can start.
Well, what's on Lynch? What's on Lynch is that it's not like the Niners had the most injuries in pro football. Detroit had more crushing injuries than the Niners. Detroit lost Aiden Hutchinson. They lost they lost basically the best player on their defense. So, there were other teams that got hurt. The Green Bay Packers, the year that Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl over Pittsburgh, had 22 guys on season-ending IR. So everybody has injuries. It's a matter of how well do you draft. And if they had drafted better, they would have been deeper. If they had been deeper, they would have been able to withstand those injuries. So, they weren't deep enough. Right. But last year was, a situation where it was just too much to overcome. You had the shortened off season, the drama of losing a second Super Bowl to the Chiefs. Trent Williams talked about the emotional nature of that. Well, then you had all these tragedies, you had injuries, you had no rest. To me,
you build an entire offense around Christian McCaffrey, and then you lose him instantly. That's a hard thing to overcome. Again, Warren Sharp writes, the 49ers didn't collapse in 2024. They eroded piece by piece, star by star. One injury turned into 10. Then a close loss became 6. The same core that powered a deep playoff run was still there, but everything else fell apart around it. And I just think that is the completely honest look back at what just happened.
And they also made some bad decisions. Let's hold their feet to the fire for their bad decisions. Devondre Campbell, really? Mm-hmm. Over D. Winters all year, really? I literally had to beg Sorensen for answers as to why he liked Devondre Campbell.
You did
I mean,
not
Devondre Campbell was so bad. And I'm like, what does Devondre Campbell? Finally, I'm like, why is Devondre Campbell playing over D. Winters? What does Devondre Campbell do that D. Winters does not do? And Sorensen looked me in the eye and told me that Devondre Campbell was a locker room leader, a strong veteran leader.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, dude, you've got to be crazy. It's like I'm in that locker room. This guy's losing his S in the locker room. He was swearing and having all kinds of issues and anger issues. It was obvious to anybody who was in 5 yards of his locker that he was dead on arrival and that it was time to cut him and move on. And everybody saw it except for the Niners. So that's on them. I mean, that's on them. They brought him in. They should have recognized the personality type. I did. They should have gotten him out of their locker room. Instead, they didn't. They went with him. Then they also screwed up by going with Isaac Yiadom and Rock Ya-Sin over Samuel Womack. They screwed up the year before going with Isaiah Oliver over Deshaun Jameson. You know, that's the one thing that bugs me about this regime is that they have so little courage in their convictions on personnel that all it takes is for Jed to be like, oh, you spent a little money of Jed's on a free agent, and suddenly it's like that free agent will make the roster, and we're going to cut Samuel Womack. We're going to cut Deshaun Jameson because we can't spend a penny of Jed's money on any free agent and not have that free agent make the roster. It's like, look him in the eye and tell him, guess what, Jed, we signed Yiadom to a $2 million deal, and now we got to camp and Rock Ya-Sin. Great, we gave him a little money, but those guys aren't as good as Samuel Womack, and we're going to keep Samuel Womack, and we're going to cut these guys. But no, nobody has the courage to tell Jed that they spent $3 million of his money and it didn't necessarily work out, and so they compound their mistake by staying with it.
And what's odd, though, what's also
crazy,
odd,
they did it multiple times. They can do it again this year.
What's odd, too, though, Larry, is that they were able to make that argument with the single most valuable, crucial position on the roster. You know, it wasn't very long before they were sitting in Jed's office saying, yeah, we know we spent an awful lot of money on Jimmy Garoppolo, and then we traded for Trey Lance. But Mr. Irrelevant is the future of the damn franchise, and we got to start playing the guy who we are spending so little money on, he doesn't even count towards the salary cap. So if you were able to have that conversation with ownership, it's amazing that these other conversations weren't able to be had and delivered the way that one was. Now, you can also say, well, it took several injuries in front of Brock Purdy for the opportunity to create itself. You had to have guys going down before Brock could stand up. But that's got to be the single hardest conversation to possibly have. Yeah, we know we spent more money on signing Jimmy Garoppolo than has ever been spent on a quarterback, and then we gave up more draft capital than we have ever in the history of a franchise to trade up for Trey Lance. But both these guys kind of suck compared to the dude we found on the street. They were able to have that conversation. But again, Devondre Campbell over D. Winters was a bridge too far. Like, how's that possible?
I don't know, but it's pretty obvious. And this year, it could happen again. They have guaranteed Saron Neal $2.25 million. But they signed a couple of undrafted free agent corners and Jacob Robinson out of BYU and Derek Canteen, who played at Cincinnati. And those guys look good in the minicamp. But guess what? When it comes right down to it, one of those, the Niners will probably wind up cutting an undrafted free agent corner to keep Saron Neal, because Saron Neal was guaranteed $2.25 million. Watch
Based
it happen.
on Saron Neal's special teams credibility, though, I think I could live with that. You know, if his special teams is vastly improved and he's making tackles every week, no
special teamer is worth a starting caliber corner. Last year, they said goodbye to Womack. The year before that, they said goodbye to Jameson. Those were starting caliber corners. So we'll see. We'll see if one of these young corners shows that they can play from scrimmage and they get cut, they will get snapped up in a second because everybody needs corners in a passing NFL. but the Niners are going to give a roster spot to Saron Neal. You can bank on. I mean, as sure as I'm sitting here on the July the 11th, I guarantee you it's going to happen. Now,
I guarantee you're right.
But what if Jacob Robinson? That's my point, though. If Jacob Robinson outplays Saron Neal, the smarter play is to say to Jed, "Hey, Jed, sorry, we took $2.25 million. We gave it to Saron Neal, but guess what? We got to training camp, and Jacob Robinson was quite a bit better." Should we compound our mistake and cut the better player because we invested some free agent money in Saron Neal? Or should we chalk it up to a loss and go with the better corner? I would say
I'd bring
chalk it up to a loss and go with the better corner. But history says they won't do that.
Asante Samuel Jr., I've done my show about Keenan Allen. You know how I feel about him. I would bring these players in. And if they're beaten out by younger players, it's the way it goes.